Welcome back to another episode of the Sky Society podcast. Today I have on Kelly Russell. She is the Senior Manager of Events and Partnerships at Fox. Welcome, Kelly.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast. We have so much to dive into. I feel like your career is super interesting because you kind of have this blends of like media and marketing, which I really love. So we're going to dive into your different roles at Disney, CNBC, and now where you are at Fox. Before we get into all of that, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Kelly Russell. I am based out of New York. So, hello to everyone. I currently, as you said, I work at Fox. Previously worked at NBC and at ABC. In my free time, I love spending time with my friends, my family, cooking, hanging out, hosting. I am super passionate about helping women in their careers, mentorship. I love spending time outside, which is getting a little tricky here in New York because it's getting a little
Yes.
chilly.
Ooh. And you mentioned you like to host. Are you hosting like Thanksgiving this year?
So my parents
Yeah.
are, but we did a
Uh,
little Friendsgiving last weekend.
uh,
My friends and I went away, so we did that. It was really, really cute.
where'd you guys go?
We went to the Catskills in New York, upstate New York.
Ooh, I've not heard of that. How was it?
It was like the quintessential fall weekend. It was beautiful. We went to the
Oh,
vineyard, we cooked, we hung out, and it was just like
oh,
the perfect weekend. We all needed that.
that sounds like out of a movie like, dream. That sounds amazing.
It was
Yeah.
literally like a TikTok story. It was so fun.
Oh, yeah. I'm doing Friendsgiving with my friends, but it's like not so glamorous, just in like one of our apartment building, like common areas. But it's still something. So
Absolutely. It's still so much fun.
yeah, as long as like I feel like what'll be or what I'm excited about is trying to like bring a dish that's actually good because I feel like everyone's a little maybe competitive when it comes to like I'm gonna bring my best dish. So I feel like it'll be fun to see what everybody's like best dish is.
What are you going to make?
I'm still trying to figure it out because we just had
Yeah,
we were talking about it and everyone I was like, oh, maybe like I think everybody already has like their specialties and I'm a new cook, so I don't have like a thing that I'm really good at. So I feel like I'm gonna be stuck with like Caesar salad or something really simple. But I'm
that's
okay
still
with that.
important. Everyone forgets the salad. Don't put salad in the corner.
Salad is important. I agree. Get some veggies aside from my turkey and mac and cheese and gravy and all of that.
Totally. Everyone will thank you to help
All
aid
right.
their digestion after
All
all that
right.
food.
I'll make sure they do. All right, so let's get started. So you started at Disney ABC. You mentioned that you had an internship there in college, and you were, I think, an assignment desk intern. So tell me a little bit about your time at ABC.
Absolutely. So I'll backtrack and tell you how I even got
Yes,
into the whole
please.
internship program at ABC. So they had an intern night. When I was in college, I feel very fortunate that I pretty much have always knew what I wanted to do. And in college, I was like had an Excel sheet of all the different networks, any contacts that I made along the way. I would roguely like message people on LinkedIn. I was all about trying to find an internship. And it's so funny because in high school, people would go home and like watch TRL and rush home to watch a TV show. And I would rush home to literally watch the news. Not that I didn't love TRL,
Oh my gosh, when you were that young? No
when I was
way.
that young. And I would like inform
Wow.
everyone. I would tell my parents about like what's going on in the news. I would just sit there and watch it. And I don't know why, but I've always felt like I wanted to be in that space. Like it must be so cool to have like that fast-paced TV life and it looks glamorous on TV. Maybe not so much news, but like the television world looks so glamorous, but I knew
Yeah.
that behind the scenes there was a lot of work that went into it. So very intrigued by it. And then in college, I really had I have to give to myself. I had my act together and I had an Excel sheet of everything, like I said. And I noticed online that ABC had posted an intern night where you could go in person to their offices in Manhattan and you can speak with people who actually work there. And it's like a face-to-face interview, which is I mean, especially even during this time, it was difficult to get any kind of face-to-face interactivity. It
Yeah.
was usually just submitting to a portal. So I went there and I knew my stuff. And if there's one piece of advice I could say for people who are interviewing for an internship or a job, it's like do your research. Research the person you're interviewing with, research the company, know about things that are going on in the news if there's anything with the company. That way you have stuff to talk about and it doesn't seem like you're just blanketly going to all of these different places and applying. You're really customizing your interview experience. So I went there and we had a lot to discuss and found out that I landed an internship at WABC TV, which is the local affiliate in New York, Eyewitness News. And I was on the assignment desk, which means that you are gathering information for the anchors, the reporters, the producers. You're answering phones of people calling in, reporting news. You're listening to the scanners of the FDNY, the NYPD, the Coast Guard. So it's really like you're really essential in the newsroom. Everyone's essential in the newsroom, but the assignment desk is like really where everything happens. And then you disseminate that information and send it out to everyone in the newsroom, and then it lands on the newscast. So it's just really cool. And I loved that internship.
That sounds like so much fun. I feel like just to be in the center of everything when you're that young too, I can just imagine how cool that must have been. Just, yeah, going through all of that and being in the middle of all what I imagine is like a very high energy, fast paced environment.
Absolutely. I remember my first day, I was like starstruck because I would see these people on TV and then all of a sudden they were right in front of me asking me for information and asking me to help. And I was like,
oh my
absolutely.
gosh. What a cool experience. So I also just want to repeat what you said there about how you showed up to this like incredibly prepared, knowing everything about each of these companies. I feel like that's a place where people kind of like last minute before an interview will like jump on and like, okay, let me see what this company is. But I think it shows such a higher level of commitment, and it helps you stand out so much more when you genuinely have like the questions that you ask aren't just like very vague and basic. They can be so much more targeted and specific, and you could have higher level conversations, which will help you stand out so much more in your interview. So I love that you mentioned that you did that.
Absolutely. Oh, girl, I have tips and tricks for days on how to interview.
Oh my gosh. Can you share a couple more with us just because we're on this
Sure.
vein already?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the first is obviously, as I mentioned, doing your research and knowing stuff. The second would be like have a back-to-back conversation. Don't let it be one-sided. And that kind of takes the pressure off of you too, as being the person who needs to come up with the answers. Answer. And then if you can, in a natural way, throw the question back to that person. So if someone is interviewing you and they're like, why would you make a good candidate? You obviously give your answer and be honest. And then throw it back to them and be like, well, what do you think a good candidate has to offer? Like, what would be your ideal person for this job? And then you
I
listen
love
and
that. So it's a
yeah,
conversation. It's not just like a one-sided. And then instead of most people
yeah,
wait for to ask their questions at the end, instead you're kind of naturally integrating them into the conversation.
exactly, exactly. And it seems this is like one piece of advice that I got early on in my career, and I've just always kind of ran with it. But wear something that makes you stand out. So,
Mm-hmm.
or say something, compliment something that makes you kind of stand out. Um, for instance, I was wearing a like a beautiful patterned sweater to one of my interviews, and it was like a different, unique print. It was obviously work appropriate, but it was memorable. And it gave us something to talk about. And then, hopefully those people who are interviewing you go back to their desk and they're like, oh, remember that girl? They may not remember my name, but they'll remember that sweater that
The
I
girl in
wore.
the blank sweater, the girl with the funky sweater.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And one thing, and I think this comes with experience, but if you start it early on, it gets a lot easier. If you don't know the answer to something, it is totally okay. No one knows everything. But I think that you showing that like you don't know the answer, but you're willing to learn is even more important than knowing the answer in the first place. So if someone asks you something and you really don't know, it's totally fine to be like, you know what, that's a great question. Do you mind if I do some research on that and get back to you with a more thoughtful answer?
Yes. And that piece that you mentioned there too of just showing that you're willing to learn. I especially since a lot of people that listen to this podcast are like newer in their career.
Yeah.
I feel like it's even better instead of coming in being like, I'm the absolute best, I know everything. Like, yes, you want to come with confidence, but also with that humility piece of also like, yeah, I don't know everything, and I'm willing to be honest about that, because if you pretend like you know everything, then you're going to end up in a situation where maybe you're not performing the way that you're supposed to. It's more trustworthy and authentic if you can kind of admit like, hey, I actually don't know the answer for that one.
I agree. And even in my role, now at Fox, senior leadership, we all do this. Senior leadership will be in meetings. And I remember when I first started, I was like, wow, I really admire the fact that like these leaders who are very, very talented and successful still raise their hand and say, you know what, this is not my wheelhouse. I don't really feel comfortable speaking about this, or let me get back to you. I don't have the answers right now. Or they'll lean on people within the team who know the answers. And that to me is like a sign of a good leader.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Amazing interview tips. Any last ones to throw in before we move on?
Oh gosh, I think the follow through is also key. So make
Oh,
sure
okay.
that after your interview, you are following up with a thank you message. And don't just make it a generic thank you message. Pick one thing from the interview. Maybe it was a conversation, maybe it was something that they brought up that stood out to you. And it's okay during the interview to write something down, by the way, so you remember. But make sure you customize that because, again, it shows that you're paying attention, you really want the job and you're thinking of something that, you took away from that interview or you took away from that person. And again, it's just like it shows that you are interested in getting to know the person and not just the job. And for me, that's people are number one.
Yeah, amazing. Okay. So we rank something that's distinct. We're
Yeah.
prepping for the interview. So we're coming with really targeted like questions where we're able to have intellectual dialogue. We are asking questions throughout the interview. So we're not just saving them to the end. We're turning it into a conversation. And then with the follow through, we're sending a thank you email and we're making that hyper personalized with something specific we took from the interview.
Absolutely. And if you don't hear back from the person or the people that you interview with, like people are very busy and it could just, they could be discussing things or they could have missed your email. Don't take it personally, but also make sure after like, a week of not hearing back, you follow up in a kind way, but like a gentle nudge.
Yeah. Yes, of course. I always recommend that too. And I think sometimes, I think as women, especially, we feel like we're being too pushy if we're
Yeah,
like following up and like, oh, if they want me, they're just going to let me know. But you have to be like assertive and show that you're passionate about the role. And you're definitely not being too pushy by sending a follow up email.
totally. Do not let them forget about you. Of
Yes. Amazing. Okay. That was so good, Kelly. Thank you for sharing all those interview tips.
course.
All right. Tell me, so you have this passion for news, clearly. It started when you were young. You get this position like in the news, doing it or as an assignment desk intern. Talk to me about this transition to social media because it kind of went from maybe this news passion to the social media passion. So even we can just start with your role at Disney because I know from there you went to a news desk assistant to a social media producer. So if you kind of want to walk me through that.
Sure. So, internship that I discussed, loved it, knew I wanted to be in the newsroom, check that box. I graduated, gosh, I'm going back in time, but like I graduated a couple months later, I believe, and was just fortunate enough to land a job on the assignment desk. And the first thing in news is like that you do is like you print out scripts for the anchors, you are down there like working the computers, you're really doing behind the scenes, you're operating the teleprompter. So it's really like essential roles in news, but it's like how you start out in news. And I've been around people who are like, that's not for me. That's how everyone starts. You see the anchors on TV, you see the reporters, they all started doing that. And some still do that today at like smaller markets. They do their own teleprompter while giving the news. So never say no to any opportunities. You don't know where it's going to net you. Um, and social media at the time was not really a thing. It was just becoming something. And now I'm really showing my age, but it was just becoming something. And I remember like the early days of Facebook, news organizations were trying to navigate how to post content in a meaningful way and get their story across. But there's this new platform that's a little bit intimidating and it's not really a space for, it wasn't really a space for news at the time. It was more people posting personal things to their friends, their family. So I decided that, you know what, this is my opportunity. I love social media. I love Facebook. I love all of that stuff. And I know the news now and I know what content works on the platforms. So let me give this a whirl. And I remember I was on the assignment desk, and during my dinner break, I would just come up with like social content for the news to post. And I would pitch that to the digital lead, and I would pitch that to reporters or anchors, and just try and like spread the message across the newsroom that I was trying, and we should be, testing out different things on social. So, long story long, I ended up getting a job as a social media producer there. And my job was just essentially figure out how to get the news onto all of the various platforms in a meaningful way and how to develop specific content for each platform. And I loved it. I really did love it. I loved the instant gratification when you posted something and it did really well, or they started to say things on the news like this was we first saw this on social media. We first reported this on our social media. And
Hey,
that's
you're
our
like, that's
team.
me.
Yeah. Like I was just like really, really proud of myself. And it has since evolved. I'm so proud when I see their posts in my feed. I'm like, I was like a founding father. But it made me really, really happy. But the news is very difficult. And it's a lot of heavy stuff. So you're dealing with a lot of, crime and hate and difficulty and all of that. And it was a little bit like depressing for me at a certain point to be dealing with that day in and day out. And I
Yeah.
decided, you know what? I love TV. I do love news, but let me try entertainment. And I'm always looking for like how I can improve myself, how I can improve my skill set. I was dabbling into the entertainment space while in news, posting more feature articles. So I applied for a job at NBC, specifically CNBC, as their social media producer for primetime
I'm
entertainment
gonna
program.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
pause you there because I want
yeah.
to get more into that, but I wanted to talk about Disney for just a sec because you did something super amazing that you just kind of like glossed over. So I want to point out how amazing it was what you just did. The fact that
Thanks.
you had a role that was not even in the space that you wanted to be and you took the initiative like
Yeah.
on your break to go and create content and also just to like go pitch it to other people because that's also really, really scary to go to other departments and pitch that, I think is absolutely amazing and very inspiring because I also know that there's a lot of people that want to work in social that are on different departments, different teams, and they're struggling to kind of make that switch. And so I think what you did is like a perfect example of how you can do it. Not easy at all. It takes a lot of work, takes guts to like go and pitch your idea. But I just want to highlight that because I think that's so, so awesome that you did that.
Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate that. And you know what's so funny? And you learn this throughout your career, but if you can start earlier, the better. What is the worst that they could say? No. Okay, then you know. And I just always have that mindset in everything that I do, whether it's, in real estate, in TV, in my personal life. The worst they could say is no, and then you get it and you move on. But if you don't ask, you don't get. And if you're not, people are not going to come to you and say, like, Kelly, what do you think about this social, whatever. But if you put it in front of them and you keep contributing, like, make yourself someone who they're afraid to lose always. Like, you're an invaluable resource to them, and they knew that they can come to me with things and I would always come to them with ideas. And for job stability, it's a good thing.
Yes.
And
I love it.
then people remember.
Make yourself, excuse me, make yourself someone they're afraid to lose. Amazing. And I think
Exactly.
what you did there going above and beyond is like, okay, I'm not just doing the job that you hired me to do, but I'm actually going to be making moves and going above and beyond what you've expected. And obviously it worked out for you and it turned into this position into like what is now your entire career now. So it's just such a cool little story there.
Thank you. Thank you. And it comes, I think you just have to be confident and just know that you are a resource and you bring something unique to the table and you're a rock star and you can do it. And I think just having that belief in yourself will help guide you throughout your career.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So the other thing you also mentioned that I thought was interesting is just how the news can get depressing. I mean, I
Yeah.
even know me specifically, like I've never been a huge fan of the news because of that, because I feel like a lot of the stories that are the most like get the most talk are always the stories that are negative because unfortunately I feel like people don't get as excited about the happy news as they listen in more on the not so happy news. So I can only imagine, even combined with social media, because social media also has its own toll of like being online all the time. So you made this switch, you recognize that in yourself, you made this switch. So yeah, tell me more about CNBC.
Sure. So I going from news to strictly entertainment was a little bit challenging. I'm not going to lie. Different content. I was doing a lot of like on the ground stuff at Channel 7 at ABC. And then I transitioned to CNBC where it was like working with different teams like in LA and in Texas and Florida and production teams, and something that I had to really work at because it wasn't natural to me. Whereas with news, I felt like I had interned, like I knew what I was doing pretty much. Here, I was like, I am like a fish out of water, but guess what? I'm going to learn. And I was very transparent in my interview at CNBC as well. Like, listen, I'm coming from news, but I will work my tail off and do whatever it takes to make sure that the job is getting done and it's getting done in a great way and we're, making strides. So I think, and I still do that in my career. And I did a lot of like field producing at CNBC. So I spent, for instance, 2, 3 months in Orlando, Florida, filming the reboot for Deal or No Deal.
No
So
way.
it was so much fun. Yeah, lived at Universal
Wow.
Orlando Resort for
No way.
yep, yep,
Wow, what a cool experience.
such a cool experience. And like not a lot of people get that experience, and I'm very aware, like I feel very blessed to do it. The hours were very long. It was difficult to be away for a couple months, but like looking back, that was a huge growth opportunity for my career.
Yeah.
And it really helped me like in my confidence. Like I could do this on my own. I was there solo pretty much for the social team.
Amazing. Wow. So this was during your time at NBC.
Correct. Yeah.
Correct.
CNBC did a reboot of Deal or No Deal.
Okay. Amazing. So you started there as social media producer, you moved up to social media manager. And so is
Yeah.
this kind of where you kind of felt like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like this is my jam.
Yeah. I really like the entertainment space because it's still TV. It's fun. It's lively. I can still be creative, even more so probably than news or a different kind of creative than news. And I just really knew like, all right, this is right for me. And from there, I decided to obviously try and take the next steps to advance my career. Was looking online and saw a job at Fox. And I was like, you know what? All of the ad sales opportunities that I had been a part of at NBC were really interesting to me. And I would love it if I could mix the two. So like have that creative production end of things, but also marry that to sales opportunities. And this role was senior manager of entertainment partnerships. And I felt like, all right, that's kind of what I want to do. So I applied, didn't hear anything for the longest time, just thought that, I didn't get the job, didn't know anyone at Fox. And I honestly kind of forgot about it until one day HR reached out to me and I ended up coming in for an interview. And I knew after meeting the team, I was like, that's the team I want to be on.
What made you know so instantly?
You can tell when a team is genuine and they're collaborative and they all respect each other and like really love coming to work each day and working with each other. And I felt that in the interview. And I loved the fact that on my first interview, I met the man who became my boss, plus, his colleagues. And they all just respected each other. And I love the fact that he respected them so much that he was like, I value your opinion. I want you to come and interview with this woman
Yeah.
too, this candidate. So that was great. And they are just the best team that I've
Aw.
ever, like the best. Everyone I've ever worked with has been just so excellent. But I feel like at Fox, it's like, it's home for me.
It's so important to have that too. I mean, I talk
Yeah,
about this a lot in Sky Accelerator, but that circumstance matters more than subject matter when it comes to your career. It's more about the circumstances that surround your work than it is actually about the work that you're doing. And the team that you work on is like one of the biggest factors because you're spending so much time with them. So it's so important to find a place where you, like what you said, I feel home, because you spend so much of your time working that if it doesn't feel like it's home, then it's not ever going to feel like it's work that you really love.
absolutely. And I couldn't imagine being at a different company during the pandemic because we all had each other, we all had each other's backs. Even like today, everyone goes through things in life and challenges and hard times and stress and anxiety, all of that. But we are genuinely all here for each other and we pick up other people, like, when they're down or they're not able to handle the workload. Like it's a team.
Yeah. Let me ask you, I mean, I guess about being in news during the pandemic. What was that like? Because that had to be a whole thing in its own, like insane, I
Oh,
imagine.
craziness. I just remember the first couple of months in the pandemic, no one knew what was happening. No one knew, if we would ever get back to work, if we could ever film anything because talent didn't want to film anything. They were afraid. The cast, the crew, no one wanted to, go and film things because we didn't know about this virus. We didn't know how it spread. And everyone just wanted to stay safe, which, I mean, that's like a valid thing.
Yeah.
And it's taken a while for production to ramp back up because I don't think people realize how much goes into like a single shot, a single episode, a single series. It's a ton of people working on the ground, and you just couldn't have the crowds. You couldn't have that capacity during the pandemic. But it also forced you, and I'm so thankful, it forced us to be creative and think out of the box a little. So, okay, we can't have a full audience at the Mass Singer. We can't have an audience at all right now. So how are we going to kind of mimic that and also be safe at the same time? So we entered in people, they took people from previous audiences and they were able to like put them into the audience. So it looked like there was a live audience, but we
Oh
were
my
being safe
gosh.
the entire time. Yeah, like creative things like that. And just like being authentic and being like, we are all in this together. Like, let's try to, during a difficult, hard period, let's try to do what we do best, which is entertain people and, bring them some kind of joy. So I really think that we hopefully accomplish that and still accomplish that today. And, TV being something that's a little bit of an escape from a hard, life or a hard time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can't even imagine what it must have been like working in that space during that time, because I feel like it was just something, I mean, news and entertainment are just completely disrupted.
Yeah.
And just like even working in news when like news didn't even know, I feel like everyone's reporting, but like reporting on, we still know nothing
We still know nothing.
every
And
day.
reporters are in their kitchens doing live shots.
Yeah.
It's just like crazy how like
It's
how
so
quickly.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
also
And
crazy. I feel like it seems like it was a long time ago almost, because like life is pretty much normal, but it really was only like, a year and a half ago. Like it really wasn't that long ago.
it's insane. I feel like time has gone by so fast, but also so slow at the same time, if that makes any sense.
It does. I moved here, and I was just telling you I live in Austin now, and it was. I was in San Diego. COVID hit. Went back with my parents for a little bit, and it was just like unreal. I mean, we don't need to talk too much about this because I know it's been talked about before, but the whole thing is just crazy. But you mentioned like how it forced you to be creative. Like
Yeah.
this Sky Society would not exist if the pandemic didn't exist, because the reason I created it was because so nobody could get hired during the pandemic, and so I wanted to do something to help. But it definitely forces creativity. I mean, extreme situations like that do.
Absolutely. And I love what you just said there because I know so many people who had this dream or had this thought to do something at some point, and the pandemic really forced them to pursue that. And
Yes.
like, there's always like a lesson or a reason or a season to something. And I
Mm-hmm.
really, really believe that that is like, that was a blessing to come out of such a difficult
Yeah, it's definitely a positive way to look at it. Okay, all this bad stuff happened, but it did some good. A lot of people became entrepreneurs during that time. I think it was we had like the highest like year of entrepreneurs, which is a cool thing that kind of
time.
inspired
Yeah.
innovation. And but yeah, the news definitely must have been really interesting in that time. One of the other things I also want to mention that kind of happened at this time for you was real estate. So
Yeah.
you've had your license since you were 18, but tell me kind of how you kind of got into real estate again while still doing your full career.
Buckle up. so, so, like you mentioned, I got my license at 18. And to be honest, like it was between college and I was like high school and college. And I was like, you know what? I really like real estate. I've always kind of had a passion for it. Let me get my license and have that as like a backup security in case like the TV gig doesn't work out. So I've always had that, but I never really dabbled in real estate. I just kept my license on referral. And it wasn't until, oh gosh, like a year ago, to be completely transparent, again, I'm an open book. I was going through a breakup and I was feeling really down in the dumps. And I thought to myself, okay, I used to spend every weekend with this person. Like, let me replace it with something good and let me distract myself a little bit. So I got back into real estate. And from there, it's really evolved. And like I said earlier, like there's a reason why I got back into it. And it has just been this great side hustle for me. And I've gained so much confidence. I'm able to pursue both my corporate Fox job and my side hustle of real estate at the same time. It seems to be working, knock on everything.
Not
But
gonna,
I also feel
yeah.
like it's pushed me to like challenge myself. And I'm so proud looking back that I'm able to do both of those at the same time. And I just feel so energized by the two that it's almost making me do better at like both careers that I'm able to juggle both of them because they both require different things of me.
Yes, I'm sure. And real estate's an interesting one because I think that was also, you've had your license for a while, but I also know in the pandemic, I know a bunch of my friends who were like, I'm going to get my real estate license. Like real estate's through the roof right now. And I feel like it also kind of pushed people to do that.
Yes.
What for you though, like having both of these, like and this is and not just like a little side hustle, like real estate can be, and you know, it's a lot of work to do that as a side hustle.
Demanding.
So how, like, I guess, like, I know you mentioned that that's not necessarily a big struggle for you to manage both, but kind of, can you describe more of how they like relate to each other? Because I also think there's a lot of value to have something like that's kind of your own outside of
Yeah.
work. And I feel like this is a good example of that. So kind of, yeah, dive in a little bit deeper for me.
Sure. Yeah. So real estate, I am my own boss. I have a broker that we help each other. He helps me, I help him. But ultimately you're an independent contractor. You work on your own, you work as much or as little as you want. And my corporate job, I obviously am not my own boss, but I work for an organization. But I feel like the common thread between the two, honestly, is the people. I interact with a lot of people in real estate. I interact with a lot of people at Fox, and I am like a total people person, and I love finding out about people. I love hearing their stories. I love having a conversation. I learn so much from the people that I meet on a daily basis that I think that like gets me going. And for me, it's that, but I also am a firm believer in if you want to make time for someone or something, you make the time. If you don't, you just make
Yes.
excuses. And
Yes.
there's no
Oh
excuse.
gosh. I mean, we
Yeah.
talk about boyfriends, we could talk about that forever.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, forever, forever. But like it's true. Like you make it work. And if you want to do something, like I wanted to do both, I make it work. Of course there are sacrifices. Of course, like I'll lose, hours of sleep, or I'll lose like a fun weekend, but I also juggle both and have a social life at the same time. And for me, like like I said earlier, it just proves that I'm able to do this. I'm capable of doing it. And I just love the fact that in both of these roles, I'm thinking creatively. I'm marketing myself for real estate, and I'm marketing shows and a network for Fox. But they're two completely different things, but there's so many similarities between the two. And I feel like my skill set really helps in both areas. And I'm learning so much about myself, but also about the industries.
Yes. And about marketing too.
Yeah.
When I started, you know, Sky Society, and before I had a partnership marketing role actually, so much of what I learned was able to bring was from little side hustles I had done before, because when you do your own business, you have to learn everything on your own from the
Yeah.
ground up. And there's nothing that can like compare to what that is like when you're like, okay, I built this website, I have to figure out how to get people to it. Like, and when you go from just that fundamental level where I feel like from school you kind of like learn, you know, how like words and definitions and stuff, but it's so different when you're actually doing it and you're making mistakes and it's your money, and if you lose, like there's way different stakes than it is when you're working at a business. So there's like, it's one of my absolute favorite ways to learn, and I'm very much believe like learn by doing, but
Yeah.
there's doing your own side hustles like the ultimate teacher.
Absolutely. They don't call me side hustle Russell for nothing.
I love that side podcast episode title, maybe.
So sweet. But I completely agree with you. Absolutely. There's something to be said about being your
Yeah.
own and being in charge of like your own business that is just like invigorating almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially like you mentioned, like even though you do work for brokerage, like you do work for yourself. And so it's very motivating, kind of like what you said. Like you don't, it's it's more time, but the motivation piece when it's your own thing, the time doesn't really become a factor, because it's almost like it's not even work too. It's just like it's fun. It's what you love to do.
I agree. People are like, oh, doesn't it stink spending your weekends doing open houses? I'm like, I live for the weekend. Like, I love it because Friday, I never really close work. I never really close Fox. I'm always available, and there are always things that come up sometimes. But, Friday, it's like, all right, Friday night, transition to real estate. Let's go. And I love it. I really do. And I love Sunday night. I'm like, okay, it's Fox time. Like, turn off the real estate. Let's go.
Yeah.
But it is laughable sometimes because I will spend, I wake up very early in the morning intentionally because I get some work done before heading to Fox, my corporate job, spend all day there. I don't get home until later. Sometimes I have client stuff, which puts me back, or social events, which would put me back even further. I come home and I'm on the computer again doing real estate stuff. So it's like, you just make it work. It's a lot, but like, again, I'm passionate about it. I'm excited about it. I'm my own boss. If I don't do the work, no one's going to do it for me. So
Yeah, you're a hard worker. I can tell that through and through.
You too.
Um, okay, one thing I do want to touch on before we wrap up here in a bit is you have this incredible career within news and entertainment, and it's a place where so many people want to be. So,
Yeah.
do you have any advice for people who are earlier in their career who maybe want to have a career path really similar to you? What advice would you share with them?
Sure. I would say that first of all, find a mentor someone who's already in the industry that you want to be in. Either it's, you find them on LinkedIn and you message them, or it's a friend of a friend, whatever. Don't be afraid to reach out. That's how a lot of connections are made. And honestly, people should be like flattered that someone wants them to mentor them. So, and it's something that you should do as you advance through your career. Like there's this gift that's constantly shared like during International Women's Day, and it's a woman lifting a woman up, and that woman is then lifting someone else up. And it's like we as women need to lift each other up. It is so important. And as you advance through your career, make sure you're looking behind and you're pulling someone back up. Like I was once that girl. And I had a great mentor who helped me along the way. I owe it to myself and I owe it to those people to help them too. So I think it's finding someone who's in that space that you look at like a mentor. I think it's also like not being afraid to start at smaller markets or start at smaller stations or smaller companies, because that's honestly where you learn a great deal about like the industry and stuff, and you learn a skill set and you move on from there to larger corporations, larger networks, larger companies, whatever it may be. But don't be afraid to start small. My first internship was at a Daily Deal website that was like local, and I did a lot of field marketing stuff, but I learned so much and it prepared me
Yeah.
for my next internship and for my jobs moving forward. So I would say that. I would also say just never, even if you have an internship role or a job that you're not as passionate about, make sure you're still making connections and you're still hustling and you're still putting your best foot forward, because those are connections that you make and references that will help you along the way too. So you have those people who can vouch for you when you're looking for another job, or they may know someone at some point. So never burn any bridges and always work your tail feather off, and make sure that, you're doing a great job at your career and you're someone that they don't want to lose.
Yeah. And I mean, you said so many good things in there, but just that last thing you said too about being a hard worker. I mean, on the podcast, we talk about so many things and tactics and strategies, but I feel like something that we don't talk about, but I feel like definitely should be, is that you and so many of the other women that have come on here, you're hard workers. Like it didn't just like, it's easy to go through your career and be like, oh, that's so amazing that all of this happened for you, but you made it happen. And that yes, you could follow all these like strategies and advice, but the hard work also has to be put in there. So I want to highlight that. And then the other thing that you mentioned there that I love that you did was it's okay to start at smaller companies. I feel like, I mean, even on the podcast, a lot of the women are working at larger companies, but
Yeah,
not everybody started there at the beginning. And I think it's really easy early in your career to compare yourself to other people and where they're at and to want the flashy name. But at the end of the day, what you mentioned is like, you're going to learn so much more a smaller company typically, because they're going to give you way more responsibility. And if you're okay with not having a big company attach your name at the beginning, and there are benefits to having that as well, but you kind of get to learn so much more so that later you can make that transition into the larger company.
absolutely. And what I would say to that too is just in life, not just in your career, you may look at someone or a couple different people and think like, wow, they have it all. I'm so like envious. I want that. And it's great to have these aspirations, but think there's also someone else on the flip side who's thinking that about you. So don't
Yes.
discount yourself. Don't put yourself on the
Yes.
clearance rack.
And you said too, like bring the other girls up with you, because yeah,
Yes.
you want to be a step in front, but someone else wants to be where you're at. Um and as women too, I mean, Sky Society is all about empowering women, but doing our
Yes.
best to keep bringing up everybody with us, because there's plenty of space. There's actually too much space, too many men up there that we gotta come in and take over. So I think
Yeah.
that that's such a better way to look at it, because I know sometimes things can get competitive, but hopefully if everyone is always there to lift each other up, then we don't have to worry about all that competition too much.
I agree. Girls help girls. Let's go. It's girl power.
Yes.
And I think,
Yes.
there are certain things too that help along the way. For instance, I used to early in my career say, "Oh, sorry, I just have a question." No sorries. Why are you saying sorry?
Oh, so many things, or using a ton of exclamation points in emails, or being like, you just send a smiley face every time I send a message, or yeah,
Yes,
apologizing. That's something in our accelerator. If girls apologize to me before asking a question, I'm like, you can't say sorry when you ask a question. Like, asking a question is not a bad thing. It's not something you should be sorry for. But I feel like it's just so ingrained of just like trying to be so polite all the time.
yes. And there's another thing too. You shouldn't say, and I am totally guilty of this too. I actually have a good idea because it makes it sound like you never have good ideas. And for one,
Ah,
yeah,
actually, that word actually, or I heard just is like girls use women just a lot. Like, oh, I just wanted to follow up, or it's kind of like softens what you want.
yes,
There's all these little nuances that most of us aren't even aware of.
exactly. And I think that we're getting better. And the more we help each other out, like you alluded to, the better we will all be. And there
Yes.
is more than enough space for all of us. Like,
Yes.
let's rally around each other. Let's be each other's best champions and, move up together. There's no reason why we can't.
Absolutely not. Okay, amazing. All right. Is there anything, Kelly, anything last you wanna share with us before we wrap up this amazing episode?
You are so sweet. I just want to thank you again for having me on. And like I said, it is so important to, as you climb in your career, to lift other women up, other people up. And I just want to say if there's anything that I can do to help anyone, or if you want to reach out, if you want to pick my brain, I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to find me. I would love to chat with you. And just remember to be kind to other people because people remember that. Always be kind. Put your best foot forward.
That is beautiful. Thank you. And where can our audience find you if they want to learn more about you?
Sure. Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. Just type in Kelly Russell. And I'm also on Instagram at KRUSSELL1015. And I'm on Twitter.
Amazing. Okay. Well, thank you again, Kelly. This was so much
Thanks.
fun.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love chatting with you.